It's now time for the Grobstein and Schuster Express on 1252 Sports Chicago.
All aboard!
And now, here are your hosts, Les Grobstein and David Schuster.
And welcome into the latest edition of the Grobstein Schuster Express. And we're brought to you, as always, by Nick and Ivy's Brewery, located at 1026 South State Street in beautiful downtown Lockport. At the moment, we're in the missing Grobber formation. The Cub game is ongoing right now, although they're losing very quickly, by the way. Clayton Kershaw up to 13 strikeouts. He's just mowing them down. So as soon as the Cub game is over, Les has got some work he's got to do during the game. As soon as the game is over, Les will be joining us. In the meantime, we're more than ably taken care of. Alan Bratcher, you can see him on the other side of the screen here. He will be joining us. He's producing back in the studio. Alan knows sports like no tomorrow, so he'll be more than capable of fill in for the time being. We're also, in a little while, going to be joined by Scott Merkin of MLB.com. Scott is hurrying home right now from the Sox quasi doubleheader. They had to finish off the suspended game from yesterday, and then they've had the regularly scheduled game. Liam Hendricks. I knew I was going to do that, Alan.
You did.
Liam Hendricks figuring in both decisions today. He lost the first game. Unfortunately, he gave up a home run in the ninth inning, but then he came out of the bullpen at the end of the second game, a 7-inning affair, and he came up with a save. So Scott Merkin is racing down, and I think it's Lakeshore Drive, but Alan, what's Lakeshore Drive now called? I mean,
honestly, I can't tell you.
They gave some new name. It's some politician. Just like the Sox Park is always going to be Comiskey, Lakeshore Drive is always going to be LSD.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with that.
But, that was a big win by the White Sox, Alan, because going into that second game today, they had lost 7 of 8. Once upon a time, before they had lost 7 of 8, they had the best record in baseball. But after losing 7 of 8, they were in a free fall. So they did win the regularly scheduled game. I know Fat Mike, who also might be joining us, by the way, on this podcast before we're out of here, he was at the games today. Hopefully he didn't drink too much if he joins us. Or actually, you know what? Hopefully he did, because it'll make for a better show, honestly.
Absolutely.
He was out there. A big win by the White Sox in that second game because it stops the bleeding. Their lead over Cleveland, which, by the way, lost to Minnesota again today, the Twins doing the White Sox a favor. So the lead over second place Cleveland is 2.5 games as we speak. Like I said, the Cubs right now are just getting their heads handed to them by Clayton Kershaw and the Dodgers. It's 7-1 bottom half of the 8th inning. And if they lose this game, and it's very likely, they will now be 3 games out of first place in the National League Central. And guess what? I mean, the Cubs are riding high. All credit to them as well, Alan, because they have put themselves in position. I never thought it would be possible this season to be a playoff team. But you know what? When it's all said and done, they better win their division, because right now, as far as the wild card goes, I believe they're out of a playoff position as we speak.
They are correct. Yeah, I feel like they are the product of their own division. And, it's something I've been saying all year. I know a lot of people are against selling on this point, but I don't feel like this is a team, like they're 28th in batting average. They're not going anywhere this year. When they get to the playoffs, if they're not at home, I don't think they can win a road game, Dave. I just don't.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because obviously Craig Kimbrell, he's been the best reliever in baseball in my estimation, even better than Hendricks on the south side, and he gets quite a return if the Cubs are able or, want to trade him. But I think they're going to have to fall even further out of this for Jed Hoyer and the rest of the hierarchy to decide to trade him, because, like I said, he can restock, your minor league system, maybe get a major league player in the interim. And then the Cubs still have decisions on what to do with Bryant, what to do with Baez, what to do with Contreras, what to do with Rizzo, all their contracts coming up. So something tells me, Alan, and maybe I'm wrong, something tells me if the Cubs fall out of it, I don't think they're going to be so disappointed in that front office because it makes their decisions easier.
They are praying for that to happen. I've heard interviews with them saying it's a young man's game, Dave, and that's the direction they need to go going forward. Yes, it's nice. We can win the NL Central this year, but what are you going to do after that? We could possibly lose, just like you said, Bryant. We could lose Baez. Do you want to mortgage your future just for one happy, playoff run where you could, first round bounced? I specifically don't want that. I want them to go back just like they did when they hired Theo, bring it up from the ground up again. If you want to keep Contreras around, you can do that. He's got one more year on his deal as well. But just so you know, Les is in the back. Yeah, he popped in early, so I'm going to bring him right in right now. We can get his opinion on this.
Okay.
There you are, Les.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Bye, Les. My mistake.
What a tease. What a tease you
I
both
just dangled
are.
the carrot in front of you guys now.
That's okay. We'll bring in Les as soon as the final out is done in this game. They're already in the bottom half of the 8th inning, so it won't be too much longer. So I know Les is listening in. He's got some work to do as the game is ongoing. We'll bring him in as soon as the game is over. Speaking of Chris Bryant, by the way, the first batch of All-Star balloting came out today. And as far as the National League goes, Chris Bryant is your leader at third base, far and away, by the way. And it's interesting because Chris Bryant has been all over the place tonight. He's been in right field. He's been in left field. He's been in center field. He's been at first base. By trade, he's a third baseman, and that's where he is on the balloting. But he's going to play in the All-Star game. He's going to start at third base. As far as the rest of the Cubs, Javier Baez, and what they did is they released all the things, but they basically highlight the 3 top people at each position. Javier Baez is second at shortstop. Rizzo is third at first base. Contreras is third at catcher. As far as the White Sox go, it's Yasmani Grandal, Jose Abreu, we're going to talk about him in just a second, and Johan Moncada, all in third place in balloting at their respective positions. So I don't think the White Sox will have any starters. Bryant will start, of course, for the Cubs. I'm pretty confident Kimbrel will be in the All-Star game, and maybe Hendricks will be in the All-Star game as well, and maybe even Carlos Rodon, who's had a really good record. So the White Sox and the Cubs will still be represented in the All-Star game.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, Chris Bryant, that's just another check on his resume that if they want to pay him, that number's going up. It's not getting any smaller. So what are you going to do with that guy?
I don't think he's a Cub for the long run. I just don't. I just think because of his agent and because of circumstances across the board, I don't think Chris Bryant is long for the Chicago Cubs. Whether he's traded by the All-Star break, again, if they fall out of it, yeah, I think he will be traded. I don't think there's any question about that. Speaking of baseball, and I'm sure you and a lot of people in the audience, in the class, or saw what happened at the Sox game today, where the major leagues had its first ejection of a pitcher because of the sticky substance.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a stupid rule. In fact, it's probably a good thing. But the fact that they did it here in the middle or, the third week in June, as opposed to starting the season, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, Hector Santiago, former White Sox pitcher, by the way, but now pitching for Seattle, he was ejected after coming out of the game. The umpires ganged up on him, so to speak.
Yeah,
and they're doing that when pitchers are coming out of games. They took a look at his cap. They took a look at his glove. And then they realized that there's something on the inside of his glove, and they determined it was a sticky substance. And so he got ejected from the game. And the penalty is pretty harsh. Not only is he ejected from the game, but he's automatically, and I don't know if there's any appeal on this, he's automatically suspended for 10 games. And then the team is not able to replace him on their roster. So it's really a harsh penalty. Now, after the first game, Santiago told the media that it wasn't as a sticky substance. It was rosin. And, pitchers are always putting rosin on their hands. And he put rosin on his hands, and it got inside the glove. And the combination of the rosin, this is his story, by the way, the combination of the rosin, we'll talk to Scott Merkin as soon as he joins us in a little bit, the combination of the rosin and his saliva or his sweat, turned out to be a sticky substance. And it's really interesting because they take the glove, it is evidence now, and they give it to, I don't know what the guy's called, who's, sitting behind the screen at home plate. We'll ask Scott that question as well. And they put it in a bag like it's, from a scene of a crime. And they're probably going to send it off to Major League Baseball in New York. Now, the only problem with doing that, and I can tell you firsthand, the mail service in this country stinks.
I think we all know that.
Hopefully they're sending it FedEx or UPS or even walking it to New York, because if they send it via mail, they're in deep doo-doo. Just to give you a story, Alan, I sent an envelope. I won't tell you what's inside of it. It was legal, by the way. But I sent something to my son. I'm up in the northern suburbs. He's in the western suburbs. I could have walked it quicker. Seriously, 17 days. 17 days to go. What, about 15 miles?
Yeah.
So yeah, Major League Baseball, if you're listening, don't send anything through the mail service.
Briefcase it, walk it.
Yeah.
Throw it in a briefcase, have one of your agents bring it, and call it a day.
Yeah.
That's all we need to do.
Are you a golf? By the way, the Cubs game is going to the 9th inning. They're, like I said, they're losing quickly.
I just looked. Yeah. No, I'm not. So Mike is trying to get me into golfing a little bit.
Okay.
I'm trying to. I'm intrigued by it. I'm not an expert.
Well, don't worry. Neither is he, by the way. I've golfed with him before. He's an expert on the 19th hole. I don't know about the first 18. Matter of fact, he lives the 19th hole every day of his life, but that's a whole different story. But anyway, it was the PGA tournament this weekend was the Travelers. It's a famous tournament. It's played in Connecticut each year. It's obviously sponsored by the Travelers Company and Travelers Insurance. And I don't know if I've ever seen a playoff go this long. Usually at the end of some of these tournaments, not the U.S. Open, because in that, they have an 18-hole playoff the next day. But most of these tournaments, it's sudden death. And as it turned out, there were two players. And who won this tournament? I got to remember now. Harris English was the guy who ultimately won it. It went 8 extra playoff holes. That's very, very, very unusual. And, it's on the East Coast, by the way. So it ended East Coast time about 8:10 or something like that. And they're very fortunate that the calendar is what it is, because let's face it, we're not far from being the longest day of the calendar year. The summer solstice just happened a few days ago. So they're very lucky. Otherwise, let's just say they were playing this tournament in April or they're playing it in September. They would have had to have called it on account of darkness.
Yeah.
So they're very, very lucky. It was very exciting. I'm sure they had great ratings. I'm sure the people at 60 Minutes weren't happy about it.
No. Hell no.
Wait a second. We're getting held up because of a golf tournament? Yeah, you sure are, because Travelers is the sponsor and they fork out a lot of money. So that's why they stayed with it as long as they did.
What would they do if would they just cancel it after that point, or
No.
would they have a makeup the next day? Like, how would that
No,
work?
yeah, they would. I don't know if that's ever happened. I'm sure we could research it and see
that's a
if
good
it's
question.
ever carried over because of darkness the next day. I can't recall if it has or it hasn't. But I would imagine that's what has to happen. Now, they play as long as they can, honestly. Yeah. But, if it's determined that you can't see, literally, then, I guess that's exactly what they do.
Wouldn't see it any other way. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let's see, what else can we talk about before we are joined by both Scott Merkin and by Les. The Bears. I mean, the Bears have been in the news, obviously, the last couple of weeks. The Bears, are threatening. And, this is the first time I really am taking this threat seriously. They're not really threatening, but they're more than laying down hints that they want to move away from Soldier Field and up to Arlington Heights, where Arlington International is. And they put in a bid for the land there. But not only did they put in a bid there, they also partnered up with Bet Rivers Casino. Now, that is the kicker here, because if they're able to get the winning bid, Bet Rivers Casino will obviously, and they're partnering up with them because Bet Rivers Casino will be the official gambling arm of which sports franchises are now doing with Bet Rivers and the Bears. And they will build probably a casino or something on that land there, and who knows whatever else. And I really do believe that this is serious. Now, obviously, even if it comes to fruition, you're talking anywhere from 3 to 5 years down the road. And I don't know what Chicago, the city of Chicago, and Mayor Lori Lightfoot can, bitch or whatever all she wants that they're not going to move. if the Bears want to move and the NFL is behind their move, I don't know how they work that out legally or financially. They move one way or another. They move.
I believe it's $6.6 million a year for the lease agreement. And in my opinion, Dave, I would say that Bet Rivers could be the name of their new stadium. I think it could go as far as them, promising things down the road, not even having to really be the best bid. It could really potentially be, well, if you give us this land, we could give you the naming rights. We can give you other things of that nature. Make a lot of money for both sides.
Yeah. Now, listen, in Chicago and Mayor Lightfoot, they could say, well, we'll give improvements. I mean, what? They've already tried to improve Soldier Field. They did, obviously.
You can't put more seat capacity in that stadium. It sits at 61.5, I believe.
It's the smallest stadium in the NFL by far. It's really funny, though, because Soldier Field, when it was first built, I think they had a high school game somewhere back in the 30s or 40s. It was 105,000 people, and when it was originally built. They can't do anything else there. They can't build the facilities. I don't know what they can do to entice the Bears, short of like opening up Fort Knox and just giving them money. I don't know. There's nothing they can do. So again, if the Bears get this bid and the NFL is behind them, trust me, the NFL and the Bears will get out of that lease in Chicago. I don't know how they do it, but they will do it.
They will. The only thing that I could think of is, I know I wasn't alive back then, but I recall 1975. George Hallis threatened to leave, and he was going to Arlington, and the mayor came out and said that we're going to threaten you to not have the name Chicago Bears. That's literally the only thing that I could think that might stall them from it. I can't really see any other option where this works out for them.
Okay, I don't think the city of Chicago can force the Bears not to be called the Chicago Bears. Yeah. The Giants play across the river in New Jersey. It's still the New York Giants.
Yeah, you have Washington doesn't play, there. There's other teams in the league that do the same thing.
2 outs in the Cubs game. So Les will be joining us momentarily, and I know Scott Merkin is racing. I told Scott when he left the ballpark, and again, he's coming from the ballpark to do this. I said, may the force be with you. Unfortunately, on Lakeshore Drive, you're going to need more than the force to get out of the way of traffic.
Absolutely.
That goes without saying. What else can we talk about? Unfortunately, there's that story with the Blackhawks. I don't really want to delve too much into this one, but the story is going back the better part of a decade, where an assistant coach supposedly, and he probably did, sexually assaulted a player, and that the organization themselves knew about that. That's a real black mark against the organization and certain people who were in the front office at the time. Without delving into any further details, it's not a good look for your hockey franchise here in Chicago.
Extremely ugly look. I hope these rumors aren't true, Dave, as far as I'm concerned, because that's something that could turn an entire fan base against them, and I really don't want that to happen. But we'll find out later about those details.
Yeah, like I said, it's not a good look story for a franchise. And listen, the Hawks have had a lot of good news over the last decade. 3 Stanley Cups, obviously, during that 5+ year period, but unfortunately, they've been on hard times the last couple of years, not making the playoffs, and now added to this bad story, but whatever. All right, another thing I wanted to talk about before, again, Les will be joining us momentarily. The Cubs are down to their last strike with Javier Baez, who, by the way, hit a home run in tonight's game. I think that's 18 on the season for him.
Yeah, it is. Yes, you're right.
Scottie Pippen in the news. Scottie Pippen right now is reminding me of like a wrestler, and in the industry they're called turning heel, which means turning into bad guy. And that's what Scottie Pippen is sort of doing, because he's going after everybody.
Everybody.
He's coming out with his book. It'll be out in September. I haven't looked forward to a book as much since Abby Hoffman stole this book.
I'm very excited about this book as well.
And then, by the way, that's a whole side story. When Abby Hoffman had the title of his book, Steal This Book, anybody in their right mind tried to go into the store and steal the book, of course.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, Scottie Pippen has turned, one of our friends said, he's turned heel.
He did the Hulk Hogan turn. Yeah.
It's really interesting because the book is going to be his version And the Cubs just lost. So Les will be joining us in just literally seconds here. Matter of fact, let's bring in Les right now.
I'll bring him back if he's coming. Oh, is it popping up?
Les, are you there? Les never looks so good. All right. Well, you know what? When he's there, we'll bring him back in. But it's really interesting because Scotty was writing this book because he was so upset with what happened in the documentary, the 10-part documentary series, The Last Dance. And he wanted to get his side of the story out because he was ripped in that documentary on a couple of occasions. Both he and Horace Grant just wanted to get their side out. So Scotty's writing this book, and Scotty warming up for, by going after Kevin Durant this last week and a couple of rants against him. And so I'm really going to be interested what is going to be in this book. And I'm really curious, is he going to go after Michael Jordan in this book at all? That'll sell copies. It won't make him look good maybe to a lot of the people in Chicago, but it'll definitely sell copies.
I feel like he's selling his soul right now, Dave. I feel like he's just at this point of his life where he's just, if you watch the whole documentary of, the one they had on 30 for 30 with him, they just trashed him so much in that. And I feel like he does need to get his side out, yes, but at the same time, I feel like he's selling his soul to do it because he's bringing everybody down and ranking them to the coals. He runs to Kevin Durant and says that, he needed help to win. Who hasn't needed help to win a championship, Dave? That's one of the worst statements I've ever heard come out of anyone that's ever been in sports in my life. You have to have a team around you to win in the NBA. No one person can do it by themselves. I'm sorry.
No, you're absolutely right about that. All right, before we get Les in, why don't we do the sponsorship video from Nick and Ivy's, and in the midst of that, we'll try and get both Les and maybe Scott Merkin in as well. So right now, here's a word from our sponsor, Nick and Ivy's, 1026 South State Street in downtown Lockport.
Hello, this is Paul from Nick and Ivy Brewing Company. We are located at 1026 South State Street in historic downtown Lockport, Illinois. We are very excited to be partnering up with the Fat Mike Chicago Sports Show, as well as the 1252 brand, because we are one of the few Chicagoland breweries that embrace sports and sports culture. Come in for a fresh brewed beer made right here in Lockport while catching the game of your favorite team. Stay for the live music that we have booked every weekend, or just come for a cozy atmosphere to enjoy a good conversation with a friend, loved one, or complete stranger. Nick and Ivy makes you feel right at home no matter what the occasion is. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook by searching for Nick and Ivy Brewing Company. Visit our website for our up-to-date tap list or to go shopping on our online store at nickivybrewing.com. That's Nikivy brewing.com. Come in today for a fresh brewed beer born and raised in Lockport, Illinois.
And we thank our sponsor once again, Nick and Ivy's, located in downtown Lockport. And there he is. There he is. Les Grobstein, of course, along with myself. This is the Grobstein Schuster Express. And Les, the Cubs cooperated tonight. They lost very quickly.
Yeah, it could have been a lot longer, but after that first, the second inning where they put up 6 runs, it could have been a lot longer.
Yeah, it could have been, but Clayton Kershaw said, you know what, I think I got a date tonight or something like that. I'm just going to mow them down. And sure enough, that's exactly what he did.
Well, he's up in L.A. What can you expect out there?
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted to get the fans out of the stadium even quicker than they are. By the way, everybody thinks that's a stereotype. No, it's not. It's true. You and I were out there numerous times over the years, and even in playoff games. It's so interesting. We're sitting, in about the 9th deck behind home plate, and all those taillights on the horizon by the Union 76 ball out there beyond right center field.
You're heading onto the Harbor Freeway from there.
They're just all leaving. I like leaving sometimes like a movie theater, Les. I don't stay for sometimes even the credits. I'm trying to beat the crowd out of there. But these people are leaving in the 5th inning just to beat the crowd. It's unbelievable.
They do show up late. Second inning, sometimes third, and many of them are out of there by the 7th or 8th inning or earlier. And if people want to call it a stereotype, call it what you want. It is true. That is a lousy sports town. I don't care what anybody says. The Dodgers have always been a good draw. The Angels are not really in L.A. They're about 40, 45 miles south of there. With the Lakers, when they're good, they're fine. When they're a bad team, there's a lot of empty seats in the Staples Center, just like there was in the Forum. You and I have both been in the Forum as well. The Kings, same thing. The Rams, they didn't draw well when they were there in the past. That's one of the reasons they ended up moving to St. Louis, first to Anaheim, then eventually to St. Louis. Now they're back. Whoopee, they got $1 billion stadium, and they've got an owner that doesn't care about the fans anyway.
All right, let's go from LA sports to Chicago sports. Let's specifically talk about the White Sox. And with that in mind, let's bring in a good friend to both of us, Scott Merkin of MLB.com. And there he is. And Scott really hustled down. I don't know, Scott, did you go down Lakeshore Drive or whatever it's called to get home? How did you get home?
Lakeshore Drive to Columbus. And it's a busy night out there tonight. There's a lot of people enjoying the summer weather because there's a lot of people also driving like 25 miles an hour. Plus, you have the people double parked looking for parking near, was it Buckingham Fountain? So I would say Buckingham Palace. Wrong.
You could have done it in the press box if they have Wi-Fi there, couldn't you have?
Yeah, I've been in the press box for like 15, 16 hours the last 2 days. So I think it was time to go back. But I made it.
Yeah, he did. And by the way, you did go down Lakeshore Drive, which by the way has a new name. I don't know what the new name is. Just like I still call this
Lakeshore Drive.
What is it?
DuSable Lakeshore Drive.
Okay, whatever. Just like it's still Comiskey to me, it's still just regular Lakeshore Drive also.
Still Sears Tower to you too?
I still call it the Outer Drive.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, by the way, Scott, do appreciate you hustling and getting home, and thanks for joining both Les and myself. Listen, a lot of news at the ballpark today, a lot of news on both sides of the field, but most importantly, the fact that they won that second game, that was really big, and that might be remembered for a long time because let's face it, about 10 days ago, the White Sox had the best record in baseball. They started sliding real quickly down the slide. They had lost 7 of 8 going into that second game today, as you noted on Twitter, but they won that game, and they still come out of this tailspin still with a 2.5-game lead in the division.
And they almost blew that second game.
All right, let Scott respond to this.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know, you've watched, baseball and sports long enough that you can't go through 162 games without having some sort of funk. I pointed this out a couple of times. 05 White Sox probably is, underrated, a solid champion from start to finish as there's been in recent memory. They went from a 15.5-game lead to a 1.5-game lead in the last 10 games of the season. The 2016 Cubs, who were pretty clearly the best team in baseball that year, didn't they go like 4-14 before the All-Star break? I remember they got swept like 4 games by the Mets out in New York there. So even the best teams, unless you're the Seattle Mariners that won 116 or the Yankees that won 114, are going to have a slump. And, it's just they're decimated by injuries. They're in a good spot, though. They're in a division that's not very good. Detroit and Kansas City are not contending. Minnesota's probably been the biggest disappointment in baseball this year. And Cleveland legitimately has all 5 of their starting pitchers on the IL right now. So, they're in a good – they're 2.5 game up. They've kind of flirted between that 2.5, 2-game lead and 5-game lead, nothing more, nothing less. But, they've been there like 56 days, 57 days now. So they're cruising along despite the injuries.
And Scott, Cleveland lost Josh Naylor. He was carted off the field today. So,
that was a horrible looking injury. Oh my goodness. That was terrible.
Yeah. All right. I'll defer to Les here, but I just want to ask one more question in the interim. Bob Nightingale. I always call him Dave Nightingale from the old Chicago Tribune, but right. Bob Nightingale from USA Today. Listen, when Bob Nightingale talks about the White Sox, it's inside information. Let's face it, we all know that. But he's been saying for the last few days, and specifically last night, that the White Sox are on the verge of picking up a second baseman who would help immediately in the White Sox lineup. What kind of talk was there at the ballpark about that today?
Not much. Eduardo Escobar pinch hit for Arizona today, so it's not like he's on his way to Chicago. I think the White Sox have their irons in a lot of different fires. I think they're looking big, they're looking small. You don't want to make anyone, no player is big or small. They may get Escobar, and he may be the piece that's missing. They may do nothing, and they still may be fine. I think they're going to do something, though. But, they need a second baseman because Madrigal's out for the year. Remember also, though, Madrigal is still in this long-term picture. So they're probably not looking for a guy who's, 2-3 years at second base. And I think Escobar, who's in his last year of his deal, fits that. So it makes sense. Switch hitter, plays all 3 infield spots, knows the organization, was a very popular guy. Now, as James Fegan pointed out to me in the press box, who's still here from when he was here, maybe a couple clubhouse guys, that's about it, But a very popular figure in that clubhouse. and, can help them out. I mean, you don't really need the guy that, the demonstrative addition. I think you need a couple key additions to be helpful. But again, all these things, as you know, are like moving pieces. So while I didn't hear anything was that close today, that may change by the time we wake up tomorrow morning and there may be something done. Well, one more thing to add about the Sox and trades is, most of their trade commodities are now making contributions to the big league level. And, Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams have talked about this rebuild. This is not a one-off thing. This is not win this year and forget about, the next 3 or 4. So, they're not going to trade a Michael Kopech. They're almost certainly not going to trade a Garrett Crochet. Right. So you're talking about very young pitchers who you could trade that are like, at Kannapolis, who other teams haven't scouted as much because there was no minor league season last year. So it may take a little bit to get this, rolling, get this moving.
I'm thinking maybe Jake Berger is trade possibility. I mean, he's all of a sudden gotten over his injuries and he's starting to hit. I don't know what Arizona needs or what anybody else needs, but that's the kind of player that as a fan, I don't mind giving up because I think they're fortified enough without a bat like his.
Yeah, Berger's a great story. I mean, he missed 3 years with 2 ruptured Achilles in the same leg, in the left leg, and he's coming back in his first full season since, really in the minor leagues. 17 he played after he got drafted. He's crushing the ball and playing third while learning second. I don't think, no offense to Jake or a guy like Gavin Cheats, who both can help the White Sox, I don't think either one is going to get you, a player straight up. But it's probably some sort of combination that's going to eventually, get a job done. And it may not even be those guys, but these guys all know when they're at that level that, they're either there to help the Sox by coming up and playing, or they're there to help the Sox by being part of a trade to bring someone back. These guys aren't unaware. They know what the score is going into each season.
I want to ask you about Jose Abreu. He got hit in the knee. What is the latest you heard about him?
Tony said he wanted to wait 24 hours and see how he responds. I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV, but I would be stunned if he doesn't get a trip to the IL. They're already so shorthanded that I just don't think you can let him sit for 3 or 4 days and say, well, we'll see how he is at the end of the Minnesota series. I think now you do have guys who can DH and you can, put anyone in there, but I think it behooves them. And, Tony had already talked about that during this slow month of June that Jose had, which is very uncharacteristic for him, that he was dealing with soreness already. And this guy's been beat up this year. He ran into Hunter Dozier. He hurt his ankle sliding home, scoring a winning run against Kansas City. He had a bat accidentally flipped into his leg by an umpire when he was trying to clear the path for Jake Lamb to score. And then today gets hit in the left knee. And I'll add this, that, he got hit. He was writhing in pain, and he slammed his helmet down after that. So I'm sure part of it was aggravation about, what's next. But maybe there was something there that he knew this hurts more than just kind of a normal. It takes a lot to get that guy off his feet and get this guy off the line. Kenny Williams coined the phrase Chicago tough many years ago, and Jose Abreu is Chicago tough to like the nth power for this team.
Absolutely terrible place to get hit with a 96-mile-an-hour fastball.
Yeah,
there's
no saw his reaction. You saw his reaction. He doesn't. I don't think when he ran into Dozier, which is 250-pound guys running at full force, he was in as much pain as he appeared to be after he got hit in the left knee today.
Let me ask you another question, too, real quick. We know Santiago got busted. He got kicked out of the game. He's going to get a 10-game suspension, no fine. I still think that's ridiculous, but, baseball does what baseball does. With regard to that, then you had at the end of that Dodger game, when Clayton Kershaw came out and he was getting a standing ovation, the umpires had to step in the middle and start checking him out. That was absolutely ridiculous. Let the fans give him an ovation. Let him have a good time. They had to check things out.
Well, as I pointed out today, Evan Marshall, at the end of his outing in Game 2, he jammed, I think, Ty France, and it was a little spinning pop-up that Marshall made like a basket catch in front of home plate and then just walked another few steps and let the umpire check him. But, the Santiago thing is interesting because I was the pool reporter to talk to Tom Hallion, who wasn't in that first game but is the crew chief. Phil Cuzzy, who many people remember has been around for years, was the umpire who checked. He was the home plate umpire for that game. And, Tom Hallion told me that it was a sticky substance that they, have grown to look for over the years, many years they've been umpiring. And, Santiago and Scott Service said it was a mixture of rosin and sweat. And Santiago said after the game, he swears all he used was rosin. I know Hector. Hector's a really good kid. He pitched for the Sox for 5-6 years, somewhere in that range. Did a little bit of everything for that team. He was a long reliever. He was a starter. He was a closer. So it'll be interesting to see how this is worked. This is the first guy to do it. I mean, you got to believe what pitcher would do that, knowing what the ramifications. I mean, how could you even do that? So we'll see how they rule on this when they look at the evidence.
You know, Scott, there are a couple of things on that subject. First of all, I don't mind that baseball is cracking down. That's okay. But to do it in the middle of the season and just flip everything on its head, it's just idiotic. And then they take his glove, okay? They bring it to the guy, and what's the guy called now behind home plate? What's he called?
I'm not even sure of the name of that. But I know
they had
put
a
in a plastic bag to send to the office, right?
Yeah, they had a term for him. And so it's almost like a crime scene where they take the evidence and they put it, in a hermetically seal in a bag, and then they're going to send it to the New York office. What are they going to find 3 days later or whatever it is on that mitt? Come on, this is a joke.
Well, I haven't seen many in person. I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention Friday night, but I've seen some on TV. And I wasn't at the Pittsburgh series. I had the Pittsburgh series off, the 2 games there. But I noticed, they usually take 15, 20 seconds. And the players the pitchers are laughing and they move them on. Except Max Scherzer, he wasn't laughing. And then, but I noticed that I happen to be, where our press box is situated. And I was looking right down at the meeting and I'm like, this is taking a little while. And then they called, the other 2 umpires in. And then because he ejected Santiago, which I think is more formality because he'd already left the game. He was already pulled. And so, we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. I mean, this is the first one that it's happened. So let's see how they, like you said, let's see how they roll on it once they get the mitt and investigate.
It's almost like they're going to do a DNA test on the damn mitt. I mean, it's just very, very comical. Speaking back about injuries, and obviously you're right. Cleveland's lost everybody. Venus de Milo is going to be throwing for them next very soon. But the White Sox have obviously had more than their share of injuries.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, obviously when you're talking about Madrigal being out for the season, and I want to ask you specifically, realistically, what are the chances of Robert and/or Jimenez coming back, whether in late August or September? I mean, I'm sure it's a guessing game at this point, but do they harbor hopes that either of those 2 guys will come back?
They really do. And I think it may not even be late August. It might be more like early August, at least what we're hearing from Eloy. And, we haven't heard much of an update on Robert. We just heard that Eloy was cleared to start doing baseball activities. But there still will be a rather extensive rehab assignment since he hasn't played since, the end of spring training when he hurt himself. So really, depending on what else they do before the trade deadline, those are 2 pretty huge additions. Plus, you're getting Michael Kopech back if all things go well, probably in the next 10 days, 2 weeks, at the latest, probably right after the All-Star break. So, I mean, you had a 40 home run potential. You had Luis Robert who can do a little bit of everything. You want to see how Luis Robert responds because his legs are so valuable and he has that hip flexor tear. But, you put those 2 in a lineup, it's pretty good already, and it's a big push for them. So, yeah, I think they would be more, from what I've heard, they'd be more surprised now if they don't come back than if they do come back this year.
Especially back to 1997. Remember when Robin Ventura tore up his ankle in Sarasota at the end of spring training? The last year they trained down there, and he was out for the year. And he kept saying, no, I'm going to be back. He was back. He was back by the end of July, early August, and he got a double in his first game back.
Yeah, I wasn't covering the team then, but I remember seeing that injury on video, and that was as bad as the Naylor. I really hope Josh Naylor is okay. He seems like a really good guy. The people who cover Cleveland really enjoy covering him. But I don't think I've ever seen, when he reacted, I don't think I've ever seen a player, at least on tape, in more pain than what he looked like. I mean, it was a gruesome injury. So, I mean, you hope that he has a good, that he's able to have whatever happened, you can get a good quality of life. Forget about baseball. Just worry about life and his family and everything else first.
Hey, Scott, I was thinking about this. One of the strengths, obviously, of the White Sox, especially since the injuries has been mostly to the offensive end of the ball club, has been their starting pitching overall. Right. And they might have overall from 1 to 5 the best 1 to 5 staff in Major League Baseball. That's debatable. But if you had a 1 game, or you have to start the playoffs with 1 game, who is your first game pitcher?
That's a tough call. I mean, Rodon's been as dominant as anyone in baseball this year, right? I mean, except for DeGrom. But DeGrom I don't even count because he's just another, form of pitcher compared to everyone
He's
else.
on another planet. He's on another
Yeah,
planet.
exactly. But Rodon, other than DeGrom, has been as good as anyone. Lance Lynn's got that experience. He's a big game pitcher. And then you can't overlook Giolito. And
or Dallas Keuchel for that matter.
Yeah, they're both very good. The thing is, last year in the playoffs in Oakland, what they were missing, and Tim Anderson mentioned this, was, they did not have that third starter. They had Giolito, they had Keuchel, both had great years. Both were in the Cy Young balloting at the end of the year. And then they had two very young, talented pitchers in Cease and Dunning, who, let's be honest, they just didn't trust at that point of the year in Game 3. So they went, with Dunning as an opener, and then Crochet was supposed to follow when he got hurt. Now you have that. You traded Dunning to get Lynn. And Lynn, is on his last year, so they're really going for it this year with him. He'll be a free agent most likely after this year. And you also have the emergence of Rodon, who also will be a free agent after this year. I would still think it's Giolito or Lynn for Game 1, but, man, you have some options there. And then Kopech's in relief right now, but, include him in for the future in that rotation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think down the road he's going to be the best of all of them. That's just my opinion. But I think, considering that we're not talking about a game until October, I think I'm going with Lance Lynn, followed by Keuchel. And I love Rodon right now, but I'm considering also that you're talking about another, 100 innings maybe pitched by Rodon before you get to October.
Right.
And the fact that he's still coming off a couple of seasons of injuries, I don't know if he's going to be as strong in October as he's been at the early part of the season. So I'm going with the veteran pitcher as of right now. That could change, obviously.
They've done a great job with Rodon, though, giving him, the extra days where they can. There's been a number of times where he's pitched on 7, even 8 days rest, and that's helped keep him strong. Don't overlook Giolito either, though, because Giolito's numbers are a little skewed because he had that one awful start, I think, on Patriots Day in Boston, where he gave up like 8 runs and 1 1/3 innings, just did not have it at all that day. Might have been tipping pitches or whatever, but he's a guy, too, who's done it before. He did it last year and carried a perfect game into the 7th inning against a very good Oakland team. So that's the best thing that Rick and Kenny have done is they've built options, and you win on pitching. You can get to the playoffs on hitting. Everyone loved the Twins Bomba squad from a couple years ago. They went out in the first round. You win in the postseason on pitching. We saw it in 2005 with the White Sox. We've seen it on every year, teams that win a World Series.
Scott, I invite you to stick around for Stump the Grobber because I patterned all the questions with you in mind. They're all Michigan questions, by the way.
All right, sounds good. We'll see how much I know.
And
question: what team can they not beat if that meant the end of the world? The Ohio State University.
Well, that's in this period. When John Cooper was there, they couldn't lose to him. But unfortunately, this little period has lasted about 15 years now, which is not good. The only one we had over it was when Luke Fickell was filling in between Tressel and Urban Meyer.
If I'm not mistaken, and I might be, I think when the Michigan first played Ohio State, and we're talking 100+ years ago, I think Michigan won the first 7 or 8 games. They probably should have ended the rivalry right then and there.
No, they were I want to say 10 with Lloyd Carr and Gary Moeller. They were like 10-2-2 against Cooper, but they have just been.
You mean the same Lloyd Carr that wouldn't shake hands with Gary Barnett?
I don't remember that one, but
when Michigan lost to Northwestern, both in 95, 95, I should say, and 96, he refused to shake hands with them after the game.
Was one of them the 54-51 loss where?
No, maybe that was the 54-51 game was a different year completely.
No, I'm teasing.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, before we get to Stump the Grobber, we also do a walk down memory lane segment, and this also has you in mind, Scott, because you talked about the press box and where we're all sitting, which is down the right field line, by the way. Although you are a little bit closer to home plate than where a lot of us are sitting.
Yeah, like by first base, like up from first base, pretty much.
Right, and we're basically almost in the bleachers, but that's a whole other story. But anyway, the old press box, press box used to be right behind home plate. Okay, and it was the best seat in the damn place.
I put a lot of foul balls in that press box, including one off Frank Thomas's bat.
And that's where I'm going with this, Les, is because you really could not, take your head out of the game, because if you did, you might get your head taken off. There were balls that would come zinging into the press box, and they would put dents in the walls. And the comparable thing was, Les, you would know this as well, when we were covering hockey games at the old stadium, and the press box was right behind the goal. I think it was on the west side of the building. And the puck would come zinging up, And we had to duck those. And you know what? We weren't wearing masks, whether for pandemic or otherwise. So between baseball and hockey back in those days, you had a good chance in the media of having your head taken off.
I remember my seat was like literally right in the middle, which is now the Guaranteed Rate Club, right? And which you can't blame, anyone who owns a team who wants to make premium money out of a club like that. I've seen games in there before in the club, and it's a great operation. But I remember there's a number of times where I moved out of the way and watched the ball hit the wall and make a dent about this size in there. So yeah, it was a great view. Remember there was that little it's like a little cafe where the guy made like burgers and they always had huge amounts of popcorn back there. It was pretty well put together until they moved us down the right field line there.
Our late friend Eric Brown, who used to work at WBBM, Eric would always come with his mitt. And he would always be pounding his mitt. And there were a couple of times he literally caught foul balls because they would come zinging right up into the press box. Nowadays,
if we get a foul ball now, it's either a right-handed swinger who's way late or a left-handed swinger who's way early. One of the. I think there might have been one, maybe a handful that have actually come in there that I can remember.
Right. The ball I caught off Frank Thomas's bat came right to me. I caught it. And, of course, all those big lugs are saying, oh, throw me the ball. And I refused because I would try to throw it to a little kid, and they would just steal it. So I would go down into the stands and hand it to a little kid on his dad or mom's lap. And
very nice.
I did not tell them who I was. Somehow they found out who I was. The guy called me on the air right here on the score later that night to thank me for it. They said the kid, who was about a year and a half old, had still not let go of that baseball.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I had a moment in Tampa where I forgot who the reporter was sitting in front of me, and Quentin hit a foul ball, and the reporter went up to grab it and then thought better of it. So it bounced, and it hit my computer and knocked the computer closed. And I thought, okay, maybe I'm okay. Open it up. The whole screen's like a kaleidoscope. It was. I remember telling Quentin he was fascinated by the whole thing, about how his foul ball just crushed the whole thing. And then Harry let me off the hook. I mentioned how I caught the ball. And he goes, yeah, I saw you caught it after it bounced like 4 times and landed, and you caught it. So he knew.
Yeah, it's a tax write-off if he would have paid for it, by the way. All right, let's do our famous segment now. Let's do Stump the Grobber.
What was that?
Doesn't really make sense.
What?
Live and let live.
I'm not familiar with that
It's
expression.
a James Bond.
Doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Of course, I'm alive.
2 queens on casino night. I am going to drop a deuce on everybody.
I want to say for the record, I did not kill anyone. Stanley was attacked by his own heart.
I know where this is going.
Do you? Okay.
It's now time for Stump the Grobber on the Grobstein and Schuster Express.
Again, if you're just joining us, I'm David Schuster. In the upper right-hand side of the screen is Les Grobstein, and in the lower part of the screen, Scott Merkin of MLB.com. He's joining us, and as I alluded to you, all the questions today are Michigan questions. So I tailored this for Scott. I wanted to see if he could do well on this. So let's have Scott take first stab at these questions.
Good idea.
If he doesn't able to do it, then you'll chime in. And by the way, we thought Scott's brother Randy might be joining us also. So I do have 3 Wisconsin questions also, if you want to try and pick up his load here if you want, Scott. But
he doesn't want to talk about a game in 1996 where all they have to do is have the quarterback fall on the ball, and they fumbled in Northwestern, got a last-second touchdown. That was the quietest I've ever heard Camp Randall Stadium.
Okay, well, we'll remind Randy.
We're calling Barry Alvarez every name in the book, too.
All right, again, Scott will take first stab at these questions. If he doesn't know it, then Les will chime in. All right, this is an easy one right off the bat, Scott. What is the trophy given to the Michigan State winner?
Wow. I don't know this. I know the brown jug is Minnesota.
That's correct.
Oh, man.
Land of Lincoln is Northwestern Illinois.
That's correct, but that's not the question.
Nope.
Son of a gun. Paul Bunyan Axe is Wisconsin, Minnesota.
No, you were right.
The Paul Bunyan Axe is Michigan State.
Michigan State winner is the Paul Bunyan Trophy.
Oh, how about that? All right. See, I got it.
I did get it.
Team,
I thought Minnesota, Michigan is the little brown jug, but
right.
I thought Wisconsin and Minnesota was the Paul Bunyan Trophy.
Not according to what I looked up in the wherever I looked it up. Who knows? It might have been Mad Magazine, so it could have been wrong. I'm not really sure. Anyway, all right, let's move on. Who was the coach right before, in football, of course, before Bo Schembechler?
Before Bo Schembechler, wow. I know after Bo Schembechler was Gary Moeller, then Lloyd Carr. But before Bo Schembechler, not Bump Elliott.
Yes, it was.
It was Bump Elliott.
It was Bump Elliott.
And his brother could never beat him. But Pete Elliott at Illinois could never beat Bump Elliott.
How about that?
Scott, you're 2 for 2.
And inadvertently 2 for 2.
Okay, it doesn't make a difference. Listen, in our old school days, even if you guessed and you guessed right, it was good enough, right?
Right.
All right, let's try a college basketball one now.
All right.
In the famous 1989 NCAA semifinal game against Illinois.
I'm going to get this one. I know it.
Who hit the game-winning shot for the Wolverines?
Mr. Sean Higgins.
That's correct.
Over Nick Anderson, put a little short, and I can tell you who took the shot. Terry Mills went a little
the same Nick Anderson who beat Indiana and Bloomington that same year.
On that half-court shot. I'm guessing Lou Henson enjoyed that victory, but Sean Higgins was a guy who I think decommitted from UCLA and then went to Michigan. His dad was a big basketball player too, and loads of talent and kind of underachieved until that tournament. He was lights out in that tournament, but it was Sean Higgins.
And Kendall Gill to this day says he still wants to have a rematch, a fourth game between, even at the age that those guys are all now, where they got to be around 50 years old. He still thinks Illinois would beat them if they played them again today.
Les may know this better than I do, but I remember looking at those rosters after the fact, and I think like 13 guys that played in that game had some time in the NBA. Now I'm talking ranging from Loy Vaught, who played like 16 years, to Demetrius Caleb, who had like a cup of coffee. But I mean, between U of I and Michigan, which I think is one of the best Final Four games I've ever seen, and
really?
By Michigan won, but that
Illinois beat Michigan handily in both regular season meetings.
Both times crushed them. And last game of the regular season, Illinois destroyed Michigan. But hey, the one that counted, they won.
If Steve Fisher had not become the coach, if you would have not seen the coaching change, I think Illinois would have beat him again.
Well, and it's funny. I won't go stress this too long, but that's the whole a Michigan man will coach Michigan, which got baptized with the Rich Rodriguez thing. And all that came from was Bill Frieder took the job at Arizona State, and he told Schembechler, I'm going to coach the team in the tournament. And Schembechler said, no, you're not. A Michigan man is going to coach a Michigan team, and that's the end of it. Steve Fisher probably does not keep that job if he doesn't win the championship as well.
Speaking of Michigan basketball, I mean, there's already, there were rumors that Juwan Howard was going to leave after his one very successful year, by the way. I mean, he was supposedly up for the Portland job and a few others. Is there a fear at Michigan that he's going to leave that quickly?
No, I think he really likes that job. He had the year with the pandemic, and then he had this great year this year where they lost that UCLA game, which still crushes me because they had like 4 chances in the last 20 seconds to win. He is recruiting. He's got the #1 recruiting class in the country coming in next year. Remember, he's got one son at Michigan already, and another one who's about a year away from going somewhere collegiately. So I would guess this is a 5 or 6 year run. But he learned from great people. He learned from Spoelstra. He learned from Pat Riley. He played with Dwayne Wade. The guy was in the league 17, 18 years, right? Just a great basketball man, great Chicago representative, and for the university as well.
All right, one more Michigan question. We're going back to football now. 2 Michigan running backs have rushed for 300 or more yards in a game. Who are they?
Tim Biakabatuka.
That's the one I didn't think you'd get, but
Ohio
okay.
State. Wow. Another one. Is it Ron Johnson?
You're 4 for 4.
How about that?
You are a real Michigan alum.
We used to call him Tim Biakabatukas.
But I remember the 300-yard game against Ohio State was one of those many against Cooper where Michigan was the decided underdog and ended up winning. But I'm glad
Michigan, by the way, put Northwestern in the Rose Bowl that year by knocking off the Buckeyes. I didn't think anybody was going to beat Ohio State, and the Wolverines did. And Biakabatuka had a terrific game against Northwestern earlier in the year, but he had quantity. Darnell Autry had quality. When they needed to have him perform, he did.
Good for you, Scott. You were 4 for 4. I do have 3 Wisconsin questions. You either
I'm
one.
on a roll. Let's go for it.
All right, let's try the Wisconsin ones. And again, if you get any of those, you can have bragging rights over Randy, by the way. All right. Wisconsin's first ever Rose Bowl win came in 1993. Who was the quarterback?
Wow.
You can go for this one also, Les.
I was at that game.
I'm
Okay,
pretty
so
sure
who wants the answer?
tailback was Brent Moss. I'm pretty sure, but I don't know I don't have a guess. I don't know this one.
I don't remember the quarterback at all.
It wasn't Scott Tolzien, was it?
It was
Daryl Bevel.
That's
Daryl
right.
Bevel.
And it was a
He was
very
there like
chippy
6
game. There were
years,
2 players on each team that were kicked out of that game. There were some fisticuffs later in that game too.
Wow.
Okay. All right. 2 more. Brett Bielema, of course, who's now moved elsewhere a couple of times. But he was at Wisconsin for a while. What does he have tattooed on his left calf?
Oh my gosh!
I bet Randy would know this one. I bet Randy would know. Does he have a Bucky Badger?
No, but you're semi close. You got to remember where he played his own college football.
Did he play at U of I?
No, close.
Where did he play?
He played at Iowa. He played at Iowa.
He's got a Hawkeye on his left leg.
That is correct.
All right, that's. I still feel good that I went 4 for 4 on Michigan though, even though I'm losing on the Wisconsin here.
All right, one more.
This is really good at football. Bob Bechtel from White Sox Media Relations.
Oh, that's right. Well, I mean, I
bet he would have got both those for Wisconsin.
I'm sure he would have. He's Mr. Wisconsin himself. All right.
Yes.
Wisconsin did win the Rose Bowl in the year 2000. Who was their quarterback that year?
Oh no, another one. Not Russell Wilson, was it?
No, that's later.
Any hints? I'm blanking.
His initials are BB.
Oh my gosh, I should get it with the initials.
You got me on that one for sure.
Not Billy Barty, right? No, I'm kidding.
No. Thanks for the laugh.
What's his first name? If you give me a first name, I hope I get a second.
His first name is the.
I know it is Brooks Bollinger, right?
That is correct.
He passed away, and
I got another Michigan one for you on basketball.
All right, here we go.
Chrysler Arena is where they have played. What was that place originally called before it became known as Chrysler Arena?
That one I don't know.
Michigan Arena.
Was it really? How about that?
Yeah, and I got another one. The arena before they moved into that, where did they play basketball before then?
The arena before Michigan Arena and Chrysler Arena type of deal?
Yep, that building still exists today.
The building where they played.
I would know because I broadcast a lot of games out of that building in the past.
Would it be Yost?
Yeah. Yost Fieldhouse was what it was called when it was a basketball arena where Russell played. Then the place that they replaced it with, they called it Kazi's Castle. And,
gotcha.
and the place that Kazi built. But Yost Arena is now the hockey arena.
Sure. Here's my working knowledge of Les Grobstein trivia, and I knew he did a lot of college hockey games, so that's why I knew it was Yost Arena there.
I got a question. Obviously Michigan Stadium's called the Big House. Is there, obviously is it just because of the attendance, or is there another reason it's called the Big House?
As far as I know, it's from the attendance, because
the attendance. It's because of the attendance.
They lead college football every year. They draw like about 108,000. It'll be great to have it back again this year, but yeah, it's a cool place to watch a game. I mean, especially, when you get like a Notre Dame game in there, or Michigan State, or Ohio State. It really is a great atmosphere.
When Michigan, anybody that's a college football fan, even if they haven't attended, they should see at least one game at Michigan Stadium, one game maybe at Spartan Stadium, which is better than people give it credit. Notre Dame Stadium, Ohio Stadium, the Horseshoe, all those places. Everybody should at least see one game there.
Right. I've seen Michigan at Notre Dame when John Navarro was quarterback way back when, and that was a fun. Even though they lost, that was a good experience too.
The most famous game there was when Michigan played at Notre Dame, and Harry Oliver kicked that field goal, and they thought that the wind shifted over because the wind had been blowing into the face of the Wolverines and the Irish during that game, and he kicked a field goal to win it. But there have been some amazing games between those two teams.
And
Yeah, I mean,
for those who don't know, and obviously you proved the point here, Scott. Scott is one of the all-time Michigan aficionados, sports fanatics. And I can always think about the years that we were out there, myself included, for spring training, and the NCAA games were on, and we go out or something like that. Scott said, "No, we got to go where there's a TV. Michigan is playing."
I remember one game in spring training. It was like near the end of the Big Ten season, and I went out with Daryl Van Schouwen and Mark Potash, two great guys and great reporters from the Sun-Times. And I was getting all worked up. It was like Michigan-Purdue. And Mark Potash turned to Daryl and said, "Man, I didn't root this hard for my team when I actually went to the school, let alone 15 years afterwards." But yeah, I'm a diehard Michigan fan. I'm going to get to go. The Sox are in Detroit this coming weekend. And it's a 4:00 game on that Saturday, so I'm going to go there after the game on Saturday night for the 3rd of July.
Very nice. Very nice. Yes. Hey, Scott, we appreciate you joining, both Les and myself. Sure. Continued success in everything you do. You're really, really good. And
thank you.
You're very typed in to the White Sox scene, and we appreciate you joining us, of course.
I appreciate it. Good seeing you again, Les. Glad everything's going well.
I'll talk with you soon and say hi to everybody next time the Sox are at home.
All right, sounds good, Les. Take care, shoot.
All right, thanks. That's Scott Merkin of MLB.com. You can follow him on Twitter, by the way, at Scott Merkin. Les, any final thoughts? I'm glad the Cubs lost quickly so you could join us tonight.
Well, that game was lost to the second inning. They could have basically called it then, but we didn't talk much about them. I know you did before I came aboard. They are going to face 3 of the Brewers' best pitchers the next few days. However, the pitcher that the Cubs are going to throw out there in the first game of that series, that'll be a critical game for them. They don't want to fall 4 games back.
No, they don't. I just want to bring up one of the stories that Alan and I were talking about. Actually, 2 stories real quickly, because we've covered both the Cubs and the Sox. But, since we've talked last, the Bears potentially moving to Arlington Heights, this time it seems a much more, it's still 3 to 5 years, even if it ever happens down the road. But this time it seems much more serious than other times where it's been rumored in the past. Don't you agree?
It might happen, but I'm still going to hold the same opinion that I've had all along. I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, always. Nothing, what do they say? Nothing's official until it's official, or something along those lines. But the fact that the Bears have put in a bid for the land at Arlington International, and they're partnering up with Bet Rivers Casino, so they got some muscle and money behind them. It's starting to add up. And listen, if the league themselves view this as a good deal, which it potentially is, by the way, financially, then the league will just say, you know what, the league will get behind the Bears to get out of that lease, whether it costs money or some kind of legal maneuvering. And though, yeah, I'm a traditionalist, I'd like to see the Bears play in Chicago, but if it's a good deal for all concerned, I could see it happening this time, Les.
And anybody that says they can't keep the name Chicago doesn't have any idea what they're talking about. They could play anywhere. I mean, you've already given other examples, such as the Giants and the Jets play in New Jersey. The 49ers, they play in Santa Clara. The bottom line, the Cardinals, they play in Glendale, just a mile and a half from where the White Sox train. It can be done. They will be the Chicago Bears. Anybody who says Arlington Bears, no, it's never going to happen. And if you think so, you're an idiot.
And, and as much as, the city of Chicago, Mayor Lightfoot, whoever, will try and make modifications to Soldier Field, there's really not much more they can do over there.
It can't be done. It can't be done, number one. And number two, the fact of the matter is they made a lot of mistakes when they redid Soldier Field. It's the smallest facility of the 30 that are in the NFL. Yes, there's 2 teams that play in L.A. and 2 teams that play in the Meadowlands. So there's 30 stadiums. This is by far the smallest. The only one that was smaller in recent years was a soccer place that the Chargers played in. Well, they're now in one of the biggest places, $1 billion place that they're sharing with the Rams.
You know what, Les? I never went to Soldier Field until the Bears moved in it, but once upon a time, and we're talking like 60, 70 years ago, Soldier Field was 105,000 people itself.
120,000.
120,000. I mean, yeah.
And it was, and I covered games there a long time ago, back in the 70s, starting when they moved in there in 71. And let me tell you what, we called it the Termite Palace for a reason. Because when you sat in that press box, the old one, I'm not talking about the one they redid in 1981. I'm talking about the original one. You had to have a tetanus shot after you came out of there in the game, or have a tweezers to pull those pieces of wood out of your butt because it was that nasty. And then it was better when they redid it in 81, but it was still a piece of crap.
You also had to have your stomach pumped after they fed you the chili before the game. That was god awful too.
Yeah, it was bad. But what about the chili they serve at Northwestern that you know something about?
No, thank you. All right, one other thing I just wanted to ask you about. We talked about this with Alan also. Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen has been in the news a lot lately. And I equate it to him almost like being a wrestler who's turning heel, bad guy. You know, he's going after everybody. And, you know, he's going to write this book. It's going to come out in the fall. I can't wait to read it. You know, he's going to give his version of the Bulls dynasty years, unlike how he was portrayed in the Last Dance 10-part documentary.
Yeah, but Michael Jordan kept saying throughout that, and I saw more pieces of it last week. He said he's not winning championships without Scottie Pippen.
That's correct. It is correct. But it's going to be really interesting. Does Scottie... Because Michael still had final say in that documentary, and there were some criticisms of Scottie in that documentary. So just to
the
sell
1.8 seconds thing was legit.
It was legit. But, you know, Michael did say that he thought Scottie was selfish and
he called him an ass. He called him an ass.
Okay. And not having his injury taken care of in the summer as opposed to the beginning of the season, yada, yada, yada. So all I'm asking is, do you think in his book, just to sell copies, that there might be a shot taken by Scottie against Michael in at least a limited capacity?
Yeah, probably. To sell books? People do lots of things to sell books. Hey, wait till mine comes out, which it's no near time. Wait, you can imagine some of the people I'm going to go after in that down the road, but it's going to be a while yet.
Oh, too bad. Come on, Les, give us a sneak preview.
No.
Can I get a free copy?
You'll get a free copy.
Okay, that's good enough for me.
I know a few people that if they offered me $1 million, I wouldn't give them one.
Oh, baloney! For $1 million, you'd sell. Who knows what you would sell for $1 million?
Well, no, that's not going to happen because they're not going to offer me that kind of money anyway.
No, that's true. Also, anyway, we should wrap it up on that, Les. Appreciate it. We'll have another good show, I hope, next week. Again, I'm happy that the Cubs lost quickly, so you could join us for the majority of today's show. We thank Scott Merkin of MLB Radio, MLB.com, I should say.
We'll be on a regular time next week.
A regular time at 8:30 on Sunday night. We'll be live.
The Yankees play the Mets next week.
Who cares about that? Who cares?
I saw them in the World Series in 2000. That was
who cares about that? And the ratings weren't that good, I don't think. Were they?
They weren't. They were great in the East Coast.
Yeah, but the rest of the country was turned off as well. They should have been. Anyway, let's say good night, and we will talk to you soon. Good night, Les.
Bye-bye.